The Adventures of Pyroclast Dragonlord, Beneath the Clouds. We all have our battles. Whether it's as simple as fighting to survive the day or as horrific as fighting to survive the night, someone has to fight it. Sadly, within one mind, battlefields often cross, and when they do, sometimes I find myself fighting against warriors I would otherwise fight alongside. I'm not sure what I expected when I returned. The moment Skyrunner and I stepped back into that thicket of rose bushes, a frantic need crept within me. It felt too urgent and too visceral, like the feeling of being chased in a dream. Desperation grew as I searched for him. Oddly enough, panic often makes you fail at the very thing you're afraid of failing at. As a result, I nearly didn't spot him. No one ever claimed panic was productive. Hi? Where are we? An unnerved edge wavered in Sky's voice. I drew my sword and tramped into the thick woody briars where he slept. The roses must have continued to grow rapidly for some time after Sky and I left him there. Thorns raked and pulled at the thick stitching in my cape and picked silk strands from my tabard. They could not, however, tear through the arcane rune weave running throughout both. One hell of an overgrown rose garden, I answered. Why? I stuck the tip of my claymore in the ground and used the flat of the sword to pry away the dense brambles. Pushing back the thorny vines with the weapon, I knelt, hand on hilt, overhead. He slept in that shade, with his lips slightly parted in peace. His long hair, mostly unraveled from a braid, fell over dark lashes and high cheekbones. No, Pi, where do you think we are? The insistence in Sky's voice brought terror to my veins. An unexpected fear oozed down me. Every mind mostly interprets, rather than actually experiences, especially when not in the real world. For a moment, I forced myself to see, rather than interpret. The oval leaves of the bushes shone a gloss of deep forest green in the sunlight. This could only be a live plant. Just to be sure, I focused on the blood-red tips of the thorns, and the reminiscent fragrance to the dark roses. I allowed my breath to release. Not in the fields of morning, I assured her through my own relief. There's actually color here, and the shrubs are alive. Sky shifted nervously. Again, I dismissed it. Sky, we're safe in the upper forest. What of it? Skyrunner gently pulled at my pauldron. Because look at what's around us. My hand still on the pommel of my sword, I stood straight. The many twisting rose bushes entwined one another, scraggly, untrimmed, superfluous, and deep, desperate red. Black soil and soft grass covered the ground beneath them. Other than that, I saw nothing else here. Literally. Beyond the small rose garden, nothing but fog existed. And this wasn't real fog, which fades the distance. This was the fog of unfocus, the fog of dreaming, the kind of fog your mind filled into spaces when you couldn't remember what had really been there. Oh my God. I turned around, looking all about the lack of horizon. You don't think we're... Shh! Sky's hand flopped over my mouth. A wild grin filled her expression, and she whispered, "Don't jinx it," and pulled my face away from her giddiness. We both looked down at the strangers sleeping beneath the roses. All of this? Sky's green eyes lifted to me. Did he? I responded with only a shrug and a shake of my head. Skyrunner knelt in the grass. With the length of her arm, she lifted back the briars. Though she wore no armor, unlike me, the thorns never scratched her. Peacefully he lay, his navy hair loose and unraveling in the grass. A notch marked one of his pointed ears, possibly a scar from a near miss of an arrow. His silver-hardened leather armor displayed signs of wear in battle, and multiple belts strapped daggers and pouches to his hip and chest. Calloused hands, lean form, about our age. He's the right age, I pointed out. That would make sense, she murmured. She tilted her head, smiling. He sort of looks dragonfly. Dragonfly Amazonian would not have been my first guess. He had no wings. Sky brushed the back of her fingers over his cheek romantically. Pulling her hand away, I chastised, "Don't molest him in his sleep." "Oh, hey, Pi, you should kiss him. He's in a magical sleep induced by your healing aura. Wake him up with a kiss." Sky beamed up at me. I glowered down at her. Eyes level, brows up, chin set kind of glower. Sky looked back at him and nervously yammered, "Okay, he probably needs his—" "Hey, wake up!" I shook his shoulder. His eyes snapped open along with a sharp intake of breath. Just like before, he scrambled away from me, but this time he had nowhere to go but into thorns. "It's all right," Sky purred. "Calm down." I helped him untangle from the vines. He looked from me to her and back. I could see recognition in his expression, along with a fight between trust and distrust. He obviously remembered the last time we met, as well as the time before that. He winced and swallowed before finally rasping, "How long was I out?" His tone sounded cautious. "Maybe 15, 16 hours? Sky responded, but I talked over her. Time doesn't really work properly here. I offered my hand to help him up. I watched him, and his eyes rest on my wrist, then flash up to meet my gaze. His throat tensed, and though he hesitated, I could not claim he wavered. At last he clasped his hand about my wrist. I pulled him to his feet. "So then, where is here?" He checked the damage to his armor and the daggers remaining on his belt. I waited for him to look around. The moment he did, shades of confusion and worry crept over his expression. "Where are we?" Sky suppressed her smile of excitement. I gave her a significant glance. "We don't know for sure." He sighed, a weary, unsatisfied expression towards us. From his hair fallen around his eyes to his face smeared with the mire of battle, and the sorry amount of dried magic absolutely caking him, he really looked worse for wear. I'm sure he felt even worse than that. Nevertheless, he held a straightness in his posture and a squareness to his shoulders, and in doing so displayed a quality of dignity through pain. I tilted my head back at him. "What's your name?" He met my gaze. "Briar Petrichor." Silence fell over the masses of rose bushes. "Oh, that makes sense. I'm Skyrunner Teruai, or just Sky for short." Sky looked at me, "And she is," Briar finished, "Pyroclast Dragonlord." I gave him a suspicious glance. His breath slightly heavy with pain, Briar asked, "Do you remember me?" I tilted my head, denying the flooding memories of fire and blood. "From when I healed you?" I smiled bleakly. "Or from battle?" Briar's eyes gripped shut and he nearly ducked his head to me. "My arcane thumb tore open your throat." I had, in fact, passed him over in the field many times, until once too often he had annoyed my tactics. That one solid blow should have defeated him. I was damn shocked to find you alive. One of Briar's fists gripped, his arm pressing over his gut, and his other fist gripped the sleeve of that arm. "Why were you there?" The amount of hidden rage in that question struck me more piercingly than if he'd pulled another dagger on me. I remember distinctly shifting my weight to my heel and finding the urge to gather a defensive spell. I knew he wouldn't attack without accusation. Felt like one. Briar's eyes snapped open to glare directly into mine. Why were you even in that battle? I let my defenses melt into calm. He sensed that. The battlefield only felt like entrenchment in guerrilla warfare. In truth, the battle waged in bloody, magic-burning concepts, ethereal in place and form. Each of us there fought for a different reason, but often towards the same result. I had slain many of whom I held no quarrel with, other than the fact that their goal opposed mine. What was it you were fighting for, Briar? Misery pained his expression and brought his brow down to his hand. I didn't have to be empathic like Skyrunner to see that years of torment had turned to isolation within him, and years of unjust blame had festered into self-blame, and years of fighting it had turned to exhaustion. He screamed, I fight so that I won't have to be alone! I could feel my heart beating lead through my chest. I carefully formed each word around the same loneliness, regret, and soul-leathering within me. I fight to regain what was taken from me. Every moment of pain since I lost what had been stolen from me harrowed through those next few words. Even if I have to do it alone. Briar's scream shook my plated mail, and Skyrunner caught him as he collapsed to his knees. She knelt with him. I stood over them, motionless. His heavy breath seemed reminiscent of sobs. So now we knew why we had accidentally found ourselves on the opposite ends of that battle, of our personal battles. He needed someone to care, and I needed myself to care, regardless if no one else did. Neither one of us fought a fair fight, but within it, both of us could not win. And no one could win against me. Sky comforted him. I only waited. And you? He looked up at her from his pain. Sky gazed back into his eyes as he asked, What do you fight for? Sky brushed her hand over the back of his unraveling hair. Her lips parted long before she dared answer. I don't fight.
The Adventures of Pyroclast Dragonlord are written and read by Margaret Louise Hutton. Buy a rose from Briar at our Patreon page.
No, I need those roses.